quote, and that government of the people, by the people, from the people, shall not perish from the earth, unquote. This was the ending of the famous Gettysburg Address that Lincoln delivered that redefined the nation. Today, Lincoln would be shocked of what we have done to that vision. We have turned this government of the few, by the few, from the few. The way to fix this is that we need term limits for both the Congress and the Senate. Look, our government is not working for the people here in the United States. We have many major problems that need to be solved now, such as runaway deficits and debt, reforming our immigration laws, simplifying our tax code, creating high-paying jobs. I can go on, but there are lots of problems that have to be solved. And people are just sick and tired of the job that the Congress and the Senate are doing. And this is reflected in the polls. The latest poll that I saw, the Congress's ratings was in the teens. You can't go any lower than that. What this shows is that people not only have lost confidence in the Congress, but worse, they have given up hope. This is not good for our democracy. How did we get to this place? I think there are three reasons that I can think of. One is the culture of hyperpartisanship in Washington, D.C. The second is the power of incumbency. And third, the gerrymandering that goes on in each state and how they carve out congressional districts. Let's look at each one of them. One thing you'd agree when it comes to partisanship, that in democracy, you're going to have partisanship. That's the beauty of democracy. During Ronald Reagan's term as a president, he was a conservative Republican. He worked with the liberal Democrats and compromised and solved some major problems of his day, such as passing the tax law, immigration law, Social Security, nuclear arms reduction, and others. He put the interest of the country ahead of the interest of his party. That is not happening today. We have both parties, the Republican and the Democrats, are kind of locked into their rigid positions and are unwilling to make compromises to solve major problems. And what this has led to is a perennial gridlock. What we see them is they just do enough to keep the government running, and that's it, and then keep kicking the can. The second one is the power of incumbency. Did you know that 90% of congressmen and 80% of the senators get reelected? In the old days, this used to be about 50%. When they're running for office, they promise us all kinds of things they're going to do to solve these problems. But once they get elected, their focus is more on raising money to get reelected. Money brings power and it perpetuates incumbency. To give you an example, Barack Obama, when he ran in 2000, he was soundly defeated by a four-term congressman by the name of Bobby Rush. 4 years later, when there was an open Senate seat, he ran and he won. 4 years later, there was an open seat for the presidency. He ran and he won. 3 years from now, Barack Obama is going to pack up his golf clubs and head back to Chicago. And his congressman will still be Bobby Rush. Go figure. The third reason is the gerrymandering. What this is that Both parties are guilty of this, and what they do is they carve out the districts in some weird ways that keeps one party dominant because of the makeup of the population and way they vote. So they don't face any opposition from opposing parties. But there's an unintended consequences that has resulted from this, that both parties have to pass the so-called purity test. They kind of go to the mirror and ask, who's the purest of them all? And if they're not pure, they face primary challenge and most likely get defeated. There was a mayor in New York named Ed Koch. He had this interesting saying. He said, look, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. But if you agree with me on 12 out of 12 issues, see a psychiatrist. Well, folks, today, in order to elect somebody, you have to agree with them on 12 to 12, and that's just no way to run a government. So how do we fix this? This is a mess. The way to fix this is we need an amendment that puts term limits on both the Congress and the Senate. 2 terms or 4 terms or no more than 8 years. The President of the United States is term limited. Why can't the Senate and the Congress be term limited also? When George Washington, he set the precedent. He served 2 terms and then he retired to his farm. Those that followed him, they basically followed his example and did the same thing. Not until when Franklin Delano Roosevelt ran for presidency 4 terms, the Congress passed an amendment, 22nd, that term limited the president. But they did not term limit themselves. So the change that we need isn't going to come from Washington. We, you, me, and others are going to have to work together to bring about this change to Washington. We need term limits now so that we can have new faces go to Washington who focus on solving problems rather than focusing on getting reelected. We need term limits now so that we can have trust in our government with the diversity of representation we get instead of having government run by career politicians. We need term limits now so that we can make this government less complex, because complexity favors career politicians. You must be asking, what can you do about this? If me, you, and others work together, we can bring about this change. If we want change, we got to get on social media such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and get our message out. Get in front of other people. Convince them why we need this. Socialize with your friends. Talk to your colleagues. Attend political events and bring this up. If we want change now, we got to support financially or through volunteer work public servants who support term limits. If we want change, we, me, you, others working together have to do it. We can't wait for others out of Washington do it for us. Folks, this is very important. Our government was never intended to be run by career politicians. We have the technology. We have the cause. We have the resolve. If we work together, we can restore the vision of Abraham Lincoln and our founding fathers. Term limits now.